it was so hurtful to me that that the United States had been hurt, and I saw the people jumping off the buildings, and so many stories there about how people held hands together before they jumped, how the last message of all the people was "I love you" on their cell phones. And those towers, to me, represented the most beautiful country in the world. And I will kiss an American flag if you give it to me. I'll kiss the American ground at any time because I love this country. And I was hurt, and I prepared myself as I entered those bars and entered those places because I knew what I was going to hear. Because you got to remember, this is Canada too, so there's a real sick anti-Americanism there as well.
Yeah, you need help with the PowerPoint because the lady over there says she can fix it.
Well, no, I have very few pictures. Everything's fine. No, I actually have very few pictures. I just wanted. Thank you. So, so anyway, I saw the glee. Oh, there was this one particular individual. He was so depressed since the fall of the Soviet Union. I'm sorry, like this guy seemed like he was a 16-year-old virgin that just finally lost his virginity. I mean, sorry to use that example, but he was just in ecstasy, this guy. 9/11, oh, I mean, he had been depressed since the fall of the Soviet Union, but now, oh, America really had this coming to them, you know, and you remember all those arguments? Oh, you know, these are the just rewards, America deserved it. And then the ones that weren't celebrating were saying really weird things. You know, I remember I was at a wedding and this guy's like, you know, the Americans are really mediaizing this right now. And, you know, he was in graduate school, but he, you know, they use these words, but I was like, what does that even mean? And like, the American media is not allowed to focus on this, it's their country. But anyway, in United in Hate, I document this in one chapter. I don't need to go into it. There was a glee, there was a celebration. Norman Mailer, Oliver Stone, you name it. It wasn't just the Palestinians handing out candies. The left was in ecstasy after 9/11. And that's when, after that, I realized that I wanted to start writing about this. And I finally couldn't handle it anymore in terms of having to sit down and write United in Hate, because when Bush sent the troops to Afghanistan to get rid of the Taliban and to Iraq, remember the anti-war protests? But this really fascinated me. Leftists holding hands with Islamists, chanting Allahu Akbar. And so you know, there's something going on with this picture, because Islamists are the most, I mean, even from the, you know, if you talk about the priorities of the left, gay hating, women hating, lesbian hating, minority hating, all these causes that it's supposed to be the left's cause, right? Obviously freedom hate, it's just the most pernicious force on the face of the earth in terms of its monstrosity on all those levels. So I decided to sit down and try to figure out what is beneath the radical feminist who will be exterminated within 20 seconds upon contact, screaming Allahu Akbar with an Islamist during a demonstration. So let me, it's very difficult for me, to be honest, because a lifetime of thinking about these things in just 10 minutes to try to explain what the left is about. So I'll just deal with a couple sound bites. In general, first of all, there is a deep, deep hatred of the human condition and of human nature. Leftists hate our fallen nature. They hate the individual. That's why I wanted to put a picture up today. And they believe in the perfectibility of human institutions and of the human race. Now, this gets a little bit complicated because once a communist despotism is built, they don't care about perfectibility, and I'll explain why in a minute. But in believing in a perfect society, while they're in this imperfect society, you see, they believe in the first lie, because the first lie that was told in human history, there was a certain entity that said, you can't be God. And these are the self-appointed social redeemers of our time. They know the perfect society that they can build. And the people that don't agree with them, because they're so self-appointed social redeemers, they know who can be the saved and who can be the damned. So you understand the logical consequence of that. You know, because I remember I was working in this restaurant one time, and this guy comes up to me that was a leftist there, and he said, "It's because of people like you that communism doesn't work." And afterwards I was thinking, okay, this is kind of weirding me out here a little bit, because it's because of me that communism doesn't work. So if communism worked, what, like the equation is that I'm gone, right? So here's the thing. They believe that you can also this is crucial, they believe that you can reshape the human being. They believe that humans are made of clay, and they can just be remolded, and you can make a new man. So you know about creating the new Soviet man. But what really fascinates me, and David Horowitz made this point in one of his essays, and I'll build on it a little bit here. Perfect point. And this is where the left is such a monstrous lie that they preach. If today you go back in the time machine, let's think about Shakespeare, William Shakespeare, and his writings and his plays. And think about all the dynamics of the human condition that Shakespeare discussed and talked about and drew out. If you go back in a time machine, let's say 1,000 years, 2,000 years, 5,000 years, and you are able to translate or whatever and show this to people, and they'll say, "Oh, envy. Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, he was envious. Oh, they fell in love. Yeah. Oh, he was jealous. Yeah. Oh, that guy murdered that guy because he wanted money. He was greedy." They would understand. If you go into a time machine 2,000 years into the future, 4,000 years into the future. Now, by the way, as a Christian, I believe that there's obviously a second coming. Things obviously change. I'm just saying that from the secular perspective of who humans are now, that if you go, let's hypothetically say 10,000 years into the future, or 50,000 years into the future in a time machine, and people will say, "Oh, this person was greedy, or there was envy, or there was jealousy, or there was love." What I'm saying is they'll understand. But the Andrea Dworkins of the world, and the Noam Chomskys of the world, the leftists of the world believe that in a future generation, once they do what they need to do, people won't even understand, because they'll reshape humans. And guess what? If you want to reshape humans, you hate humans. Okay? And if you hate humans, guess who else you hate if you're human? You hate yourself. So there's a deep, deep self-hatred here. And you can imagine what self-hatred will lead to. So I'm going to get to that in a minute. Maybe it's not a complete coincidence that a radical feminist wants Islamists to take over. Because guess what's going to happen to her? Maybe it has something to do with screaming Allahu Akbar. Because when the suicide bomber blows himself off, he disinfects himself from his impurity. He hates himself. He hates his desires. He hates his humanity. His religion has taught him that he's dirty. So the only way that he can achieve his own thought of salvation is by dying on the altar of ideas. So the way that the leftist can achieve salvation, earthly redemption, is also by giving not only other people's life, but his own. So, and let me say here that there's a very big religious metaphors here if you watch them very closely, because in the Christian religion, Christ's blood redeems the earth. If you look very closely at the leftist theology, mankind's blood redeems the earth. It's an earthly redemption. And leftists very much believe in this, believe me. And in all the writings of Lenin and Mao, they believe that it's human blood that will start this new slate. So there has to be a transformation. There has to be destruction. And guess what? In order for there to be destruction, then you build the perfect planet on that destruction. And guess why, therefore, leftists celebrated ground zero? I mean, doesn't it all start adding up here? Because ground zero represents the destruction on which the perfect planet can start being built. I just want to say, too, that there's a tremendous hatred of the individual, as we can imagine in all this. And they want sameness. Even the leftist himself wants to blur his own individuality into a collective whole. And so it's not a coincidence, as I show in United in Hate, leftists loved Maoist unisex uniforms. They loved that because everybody looked the same. No more individual, differences, etc., etc. It's the same thing as the leftists today. It's not, I write about this in United in Hate, it's not a coincidence that you have so many feminists supporting the burqa and supporting the veil, and why so many leftists support it as well. It's the same thing as the Maoist unisex clothing. They want to erase the individual, and it's why I wanted to put an individual on the screen today. So there's a death wish in this theology of the left, a self-hatred, and it's manifested in so many ways. Think about this. Naomi Klein, leftist writer for The Nation magazine, in an article several years ago, you know what the title was? Bring Najaf to New York. Najaf is al-Sadr's killing fields in Iraq. This is a place where women's eyes were gouged out, acid was thrown into women's faces, gang rapes, mutilations. Al-Sadr's killing fields were in Najaf. And Naomi Klein writes an article, Bring Najaf to New York. So this is all getting back a little bit to what Nancy was talking a little bit about in the beginning as well, because what just happened in Inamar, where are the leftist protests? Where are the feminists? Where are the women's studies department? Where's the progressive left? So I also want to say that this is also why you will never ever, I'm not saying never, because there's people like David Horowitz, Phyllis Chesler, I mean very brave leftists that have left their faith, but they face excommunication, they face ridicule, they face a lot. So the key here is that they are part of a movement, you see. The leftist is very, very proud of the social community that he's in, and he's also proud of his own identity, because he's a social redeemer. I mean, I have a lot of friends that, abandoned me because they're embarrassed to be friends with me because they go to university, etc., etc. So one of the keys here is, this is where I've argued with, sometimes why I don't argue with leftists anymore and why I just say one basic thing. I'll give an example. About a year ago, a woman that knows what I've been doing for 20 years but somehow still doesn't get it, I said something good about George W. Bush. She goes, "You like Bush? Why?" And I said, and by the way, in Canada, honestly, in certain communities, they've never even met somebody like me. They are so horrified at what they hear when you start talking. Because I'll tell you, like in graduate studies departments and in these artistic communities, this is fascinating about the left. I remember like this woman is just putting into the dipping sauce a chip, and she looks at me and goes, "Michael Moore's movie, oh my God, you see this, it's incredible. Oh, do you read Chomsky's latest?" Oh, like the way they all talk to each other, like you don't even know me. But they, like I can never imagine just coming up to somebody at a party going, "Oh man, did you read Decision Points? Oh man, that was awesome. George Bush, man. Did you read that last chapter?" Like I would never assume that somebody likes George W. Bush just because I do. But in this world, they all agree with each other. And so anyway, so this woman goes to me, "You like George W. Bush? Why?" And I said to her, "Before I tell you why, let us just hypothetically say that for an hour, I just presented you with very convincing evidence, and I convinced you. If you went and started verbalizing what I argue in your community and among your friends, would you, number one, have any friends left?" And she knew the answer to that question. And I'll tell you, there are people in my circles who have actually asked me to leave them alone because they just want to get through university right now, and they don't want to read my book, and please don't tell people that I think, like they just want to be left alone because they want to be accepted. They want to think of themselves in a high regarded way, and they also want to belong to their social community. And this is why, and I have a couple minutes left here, and I want to get back to what that mentality leads to. Just a second. Oh, just a sec, I'm still new with this. Okay, so what this mentality leads to, and I want to just give a couple more faces. So everything that I've just discussed, this is Noor Amaliki. This is a human being. She was killed by her Muslim father because of Islamic theology. He, by the way, was just prosecuted, as you know, he's in prison now. But you will not read it. Why in our society do we not know her name? So again, what I'm getting back to is the left controls the boundaries of discourse in our society. And so what I want to fight against is I think that Noor Amaliki's name should be known by everybody.